What up, my beautiful African family? It's your man Tej Wilson with African Diaspora News. And as a reparations advocate, somebody who has stood up and spoken out about the necessity for Black Americans to be compensated for our pain and suffering in this here American journey, a scary thought occurred to me one day. I said, what if it come to pass that we fight for reparations, the bill passes that we get the reparations is everything that we dreamed of, and right when they cut the check, the currency crashes? What if geopolitical events that are out of the general day-to-day spectrum and scope about what Black Americans be focused on when it comes to our survival and our thriving here in this country could jeopardize the justice that we are owed? Well, this brother seems to think that we are on the precipice and the brink of the EU pulling the nuclear economic trigger on America because of Trump's policies. Check out what this brother has to say. I think it's worth talking about.
On this episode of FAFO, the EU has informed President Trump that if he continues to support Putin in this war in Ukraine, they are going to liquidate their U.S. Treasury bonds, which would, in effect, be the end of the U.S. economy. If you don't understand what a Treasury bond is, I'll explain it to you. The U.S. spends so much money on military activity, especially out of country military activity, and has given so many tax cuts to billionaires that we don't bring in enough tax money to pay for any of it. So what we have to do is sell treasury bonds to other countries, which is pretty much a loan. Give us your money and you'll give us the cash. We'll use that cash to pay for everything we need to pay for, and we'll give you interest on this bond that we gave you, right? So it's like they're investing in the United States. So if we don't get those bond investments from other countries, we literally don't have cash to spend on the things we need to make the country function. Not just military, also domestic programming. So if the EU is actually about that life and they're going to walk that walk, this would literally be the demise of the United States as a world power. But we'll see. Have a good day.
Those are some heavy words the brother just gave to us. He said this could be the demise of the United States as a world power. But how realistic is this? And where is this brother getting this information, right? Because as I've said in my previous videos, the power of Black Americans is a soft cultural power. And that's a very, very real power. It's because of soft power don't mean it ain't real power. It's real power. But it is dependent upon the hard power of the American infrastructure, right? The reason why hip hop spread across the world and our style of dance and our flavor and our swag spread across the world is because America had its tentacles across the world. And it has been the dominant economic power and dominant military power for the last 80 years, right? So this has been, more than twice all my life. So if that falls away and Black Americans are on this ship, essentially we'd be fighting for reparations on the deck of the Titanic. But how close are the Europeans when it comes to America's policy, specifically Trump's policy towards Putin? How close is the EU to really sinking this ship that we are on right now? Well, the Economic Times has an interesting article, and here's how it goes. It says here, European governments are quietly debating an extraordinary economic countermeasure as fears grow that U.S. President Donald Trump may strike a deal with Russia that sidelines Ukraine and threatens continental security. According to internal assessments shared within Europe, officials are considering a drastic response, dumping vast holdings of U.S. government debt to destabilize the American economy if Washington abandons its commitments to Ukraine. For context, the Europeans are on the same landmass as Russia and Vladimir Putin. And as much as Putin looks at the West as an existential threat, so does the European Union look at Putin as an existential threat. And the main fortification they've had against it is the United States military power and the United States military's power's commitment to its NATO alliances with the European Union, and Trump has fractured that. This is huge. because the crisis for the European people is huge, right? It's one thing to have Ukraine and Russia popping off and it feels like it's a world away. It's another one that's on the same landmass as you, right? So how could this actually look to us if they sell off our bonds? Well, here's what it says. A coordinated sell-off of this magnitude could shake the American financial system, hammer the value of the US dollar, and trigger a liquidity crisis. Economists warn the impact could be more severe than the 2008 financial crash, potentially sending borrowing costs soaring and freezing large parts of the banking sector. Here's what you need to understand about what 2008 did to Black Americans. There's two great books that you need to understand about how modern racism collided with the crash of 2008 to rob Black Americans of wealth, and that is Engine of Inequality by Karen Petro, and another book that I find really, really powerful, which is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. What these books talk about is how decades of accumulated wealth of Black Americans were destroyed in just a matter of months when it came to the economic crash. Why? Because Black Americans during that time had been steered into these subprime mortgages, not like because they weren't qualified for better prime mortgages, they were steered into these mortgages. And so because there's a lot of these communities around America, these Black kind of middle income communities, they're not ghettos, right? They're Black middle income communities. There's one in my state called Park Hill, another one called Montbello. These are middle income communities. But because they were steered into these housing crashes destroyed generational wealth, and white America recovered. Even Latino America recovered. Black America did not. And the same forces that stopped Black America from recovering back then could stop us from recovering now if this sell-off were to happen. And according to all the reports, including European intelligence agencies, they're on the doorstep of doing this right now, and ain't nobody talking about it. So this is a situation that we have to watch carefully. This is not something that can just fly underneath the radar. In fact, any situation that affects the United States' global dominance as the world reserve currency, it directly affects any efforts that we have towards reparations. I want to make that abundantly clear, right? So if you're not following what's going on in the BRICS alliance and you're not diversified internationally when it comes to your portfolio, when it comes to your investments, y'all need to go ahead and do so, because we're entering a changing of the guard, globally speaking. And it's not just what China could do. See, a lot of people just looking at like, well, this is the BRICS alliance and what they could do. It's also because of the fact, and this is very specific to Trump, how Trump could directly threaten your bag. It's because of the fact that Trump has broken the NATO alliance and put Europe into an existential crisis. And because of the fact that, like, European and Western powers, majority white nations, let's just call them what they are, kind of have like an unspoken agreement that they're not going to really pull the trigger on one another, which is interesting because like Russia has never been included in that, at least since the Second World War and the Cold War, right? So Russia been outside of that. But in terms of like NATO alliance, they don't shoot at one another. But the fact is that Trump has put them in this position. Now they're like, we gotta do something. We can't just sit by. And the only nuclear option is this. Like, we gotta actually hurt them, and we gotta make it look bad on America for us to figure out how to like raise money. There's other talk about that. Like Europe is just gonna raise money to fund Ukraine's situation. But existentially, they feel that they can't allow Russia to win, and they think that Trump is gonna do just that. We're going to keep an eye on it here at African Diaspora News because we are a global community and we keep our eye on the world and how the events of the world impact Black folks here in America and Black folks across the diaspora. So if you value this, go ahead and download the app. Go ahead and download that app. I'm going to say once again, download that app. It ain't number $9.99 a month. I got it. You should get it too. And if you like what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, go ahead and follow my personal channel, y'all. Go ahead and follow my channel here on YouTube. That's Theo Cyrus Rising right here on this platform. My name is Theo E.J. Wilson, aka Brother Tej Wilson. I'll see you next time where I saw you this time. Peace, peace.